Welcome to the Horus Audiobook channel. Don't forget to subscribe for more fascinating content.
Beyond the Mauve Zone, Kenneth Grant.
Beyond the Mauve Zone, Kenneth Grant.
Oblique to the paths that give on to other dimensions, and beyond them there lies a region which the author has named the Mauve Zone. Mystics, magicians, sorcerers, alchemists, artists of many kinds have, over the centuries, skirted it, stumbled upon it and fled from it. Very few have penetrated beyond it and survived, or cared to leave any record of the experience. Those who did have had to present their accounts as fiction or discover a new means of communication via weird art, symbols, hieroglyphics, signs which fellow pilgrims alone might recognize. Access to the Mauve Zone has been facilitated in more recent times by the use of magical systems developed by occultists such as Austin Osman Spare and Aleister Crowley, both of whom established contact with interdimensional entities possessed of transhuman knowledge and power. Both systems involve the use of sexual magic to open hidden gates that have remained sealed for centuries. The present book contains references to these systems, as well as to the explorative work of skilled contemporary adepts, such as Michael, Bertio, Margaret Ingalls, Nema, Geoffrey and Ruth Evans, and the patriarch of the Ecclesia Gnostica Alba, Zvorad Mihajlović, which places them in the forefront of present-day practitioners. There is also included a detailed account of the cosmic energy in humanity, known anciently as the fire snake, the kundalini of Oriental arcane tradition, which it is necessary to awaken if access to the Mauve Zone and beyond is to be achieved successfully. The account is based upon a rare tantric work which provides veritable keys to the Mauve Zone and to the magico-mystical formule designed to surpass it. Beyond the Mauve Zone paves the way for the final volume, The Ninth Arch, in a series comprising 3 Typhonian trilogies.
The intervening years has proved to be a vital link in a chain of transmissions which have regenerated and perpetuated the Typhonian gnosis. As concerns chapters 12, 13, and 14, my thanks are due to Mr. Mihajlović Slavinsky and his wife Jadranka, and to members of the Ecclesia Gnostica Alba, with special mention of the seer, Aliona Verdi, for their ever-forthcoming cooperation in permitting use of correspondence and other material relevant to their magical work. It has been found necessary to quote somewhat extensively from this material, as the literature of the Ecclesia Gnostica Alba exists presently only in the Serbo-Croat language. By doing so, I hope to extend to a wider public knowledge of a remarkable organization. In so doing, I am glad also to acknowledge my indebtedness to that indefatigable exponent of the mysteries, Mr. Michael Berriot, who chartered the Ecclesia Gnostica Alba as a fully fledged offspring of the Ecclesia Gnostica Spiritualis, of which he is the present director. Wish also to acknowledge my indebtedness to those artists who have permitted my use of their skills and inspiration in the form of visual interpretations of their experiences of the Mauve Zone and beyond. Thanks are also due for permission to publish 2 fine examples of altered states of consciousness, the one from Mr. Gavin W. Semple, the other from my former editor, the late Mr. Christopher R. Johnson, who was instrumental in overcoming many of the problems connected with the publication of this book and others in the series. Finally, to my wife Steffi, who has given so much of her inspiration, time, and energy to the ongoing formulation of the trilogies, I owe a debt of lasting gratitude. Kenneth Grant, London, 1999.
Introduction.
There is a formidable array of techniques designed to facilitate investigation of other dimensions, other levels of consciousness. If it is understood that such techniques are merely conceptual devices, it will become easier to grasp their mechanism and their limitations. Magic, no less than science, has erected effectual barriers that deter individuals who are sometimes better equipped to undertake such investigations than the specialists themselves. The artist, the poet, the musician, the dreamer whose dreams are capable of realizing the truths of the great inane are occasionally better endowed. The 14 fields of Sekhet Aru, the 22 scales of the serpent of the Klipboth, the 30 ethers, the 32 paths, and Sephiroth of the Tree of Life, the 33 degrees of Freemasonry, the 43 Kalas of the Kaula Circle, the 50 gates of Binah, the 50 1/2 coils of Kundalini, the 62 devatas of the Tibetan. Demchog Mandala, etc., etc., are some of the better-known divisions of the magical universe. Each has its formula, its guardians, its secret signs, and its passwords. But mystery mongers and their dupes lose themselves in a maze of pathways which may be traversed with comparative ease via the Typhonian tunnels back of the Tree of Life. The advantages of this approach seem obvious to all but intransigent theoreticians who, when deprived of the game of classifying endlessly the names and attributes of angels, demons, spirits, and so forth, find themselves skirting a great void with no option but to leap directly into the unknown. Trying to rationalize an essentially non-rational situation, trying to evaluate the subconscious or true will by standards of the waking state, who is there to do either? The mind's penchant for classification and analysis can cause it to miss essential linkages. Our subject may not be apprehended in depth by the mental faculty, but it yields to a peculiar form of inspiration which may be described as instantaneous, insight of a supra-rational order. The Hindus called it prajna. Without it, no amount of explanation avails to penetrate the so-called mysteries of magic and mysticism. We have therefore to cultivate not a new power, but a faculty that has remained dormant in the majority of individuals for a very long time. It may be reactivated by the formula of Lamb, which covers every exigency and is a key to many doors, for it combines the totality of man's experience as comprehended by the sacred syllable, AUM. The initial letter of Lamb is attributed to Libra, the balancing or evening factor. In the present context, the evening is between the daytime waking state represented by Horus, whose letter is A, and the deep sleep state represented by the letter M, Chandra Bindu, emblematic of nighttime and of the god set. The formula of Lam is therefore relevant to the aeons of Maat and of the twin gods Set, Horus. Thus, in the aeon of Horus, Lam offers the most direct gateway to all dimensions, because the waking state is always in the present. In the present, objects appear to be real things, but objects also appear to be real to the dreamer when he is dreaming. Therefore, strictly speaking, waking and dreaming are indistinguishable from their own standpoint. This is so because our presence illumines every moment of time. Furthermore, our presence requires time and space for its appearance, for to be present we must be extended in both these categories. But as there is no past or future, for we are conscious only of a seeming present, there is no present either. There is only now, and an awareness of ourselves which we experience as presence. But who or what is present? The answer to this question cannot refer to any thing or object, for I am always and can only be non-objective, i.e., I am total subjectivity. Shen Hui, AD 686-760, declared that the absence of being and of non-being is true being. This double absence can only be intuited, and it requires that we awaken from time into timelessness, from the states of waking and dreaming into the absence of those states, i.e., into deep sleep, where the sense of objectivity is annulled. But this mergence with M, deep sleep, must be accomplished knowingly. Then only may our true state be realized. Deep sleep is therefore the gateway to our reality. We could not know any other.
The thumorphic symbol of this formula is Set Typhon. Set denotes an inwardness that is often misunderstood to be a downwardly directed current. It is also, and ignorantly mistaken, for evil or the perverse, but it is merely the reverse or inverse of the phenomenal current of manifestation. It is therefore important to understand that the concept of Set in the Typhonian tradition has no connection with any such popular concept as Satan, which is a comparatively late distortion of magical symbolism. Set is the seat or throne of Isis. He is sometimes represented as the forepart of the goddess Typhon, who holds before her the loop or ankh emblem of existence. Set is also the projection or child of Typhon, a shadowing forth of the crowned and conquering child typified by Lamb. Liber Elo prophesies the advent on Karth, i.e., the manifestation, of this child, though not in any human sense. The original portrait of Lamb as drawn by Aleister Crowley shows an entity wearing a headdress, possibly a crown. The crown is the type of the ankh, or living one, the king, who wears the crown to denote the reality, kef royalty, of existence, Sat. As explained in Hecate's fountain, Liber Al was originally entitled Liber L. LT could therefore, and with equal validity, be called the Book of Lamb, i.e. the Book of the Child or Dwarf God, Hur-Par Krat. Further analysis of Lamb's name reveals L, Libra, Maat, balance, evening, twilight, Adas, Leo, Horus, to a waking state, day, actuality, M, to a Scorpio, Set Typhon, to a deep sleep, da reality, da night. Maat, as the evening factor, is the reconciler between the icons of Horus and Set. Lamb, by paronomasia, is allow the lame one, hence his identity with Hecate or Hur-Par Krat, the dwarf deity, the god crippled in his lower members. This is a manner of saying that he is the god below the horizon, the god in Amenta, the headless god of the Gnostics. Also, as the one who is in the dark bee, is equivalent to Samael, the blind one, and to the blind Horus of the Egyptian ritual. We have then, in the name of Lamb, a resume of man's total awareness, which appears divided into three states: dreaming, L, waking, A, deep sleep, M. Anyone who has successfully used the formula will know that the egg of Lamb serves as a space capsule which conveys the traveler to any desired plane or dimension. He has but to gaze through the eyes of Lamb in order to familiarize himself with the spacescape. This method has the advantage of protecting the traveler from direct contact with its denizens, for he wears the mask of Lamb. This not to say that he cannot, if properly prepared, alight from the egg and conduct at his own risk any investigations which he considers necessary. He must make his own decisions after assessing the nature of inevitable karma-incurred relationships with the zones he wishes to explore. If he seeks entry into the Mauve Zone itself, he should be particular, careful not to quit the egg unless he has previously traversed, astrally, the locality concerned. He should then proceed as follows. After identification with Lamb has been achieved and consolidated, the Lammernaut should visualize the sigil of the zone and shoot down obliquely into its atmosphere. If the descent is prolonged, a sensation of vertigo may supervene and compel him to return to Earth, waking state. This signal should not be resisted. He should merely relinquish the force that impels him downwards and float up as gently as possible. If, during subsequent attempts, he is assailed by repeated attacks of vertigo or of nausea, it is usually a sign that the level of magical competence is unequal to the task, in which case the journey may be attempted in stages. To do this, it is advisable to formulate, again astrally, a jaunching platform, and to absorb same by the meditational method when it has served its purpose. If this method also proves beyond his powers, the Lammernaut is advised to test his degree of competency by exploring the lower tunnels of setback of the Tree of Life, and to worm his way upwards until he approaches as nearly as possible the outer pylons of the Mauve Zone. Should he attain this level, he may consolidate his position by vibrating the mantras disclosed to him during his initiation into the mysteries of Silba. It is unwise to proceed further unless he receives unequivocal signs that the mantras are invoking the necessary devatas who will act as guides beyond the pylons. There would appear to be misunderstanding in some quarters that the occult Typhonian order is concerned with, reviving a type of worship believed to have been accorded to certain deities of remote antiquity. This is erroneous. The Typhonian deities denote specific operations of psychophysical alchemy which involve essences or elixirs secreted by the human organism under very special conditions. The system of mamas and power zones used by tantris arguably the most consistent sphatematization of such an alchemy surviving into present times. The gods and goddesses, Osiris, Isis, and the child Horus, Anari shorthand for mystical and magical formulae, implicit in the system. Our aim is not to promote a revival of exotic and ancient faiths, but to understand and to develop a tradition that is forever new in the sense that it forms the basis of every genuine occult order, past and present. That some of the processes involved comport traffic with alien forms of life and consciousness we do not deny, but the time factors, ancient or modern, are of secondary importance. They concern us only insofar as they form part of the gnosis of which the Typhonian tradition is the most complete and effective expression. Their tradition is known as Typhonian, not because it promotes doctrines of an evil nature, as might be supposed by those uninitiated into its mysteries, but because it utilizes substances that are usually thrown out, varma, and considered unclean. A further misconception is one that is, perhaps, not immediately apparent, and one to which Crowley himself, unfortunately, contributed, though unintentionally, as a legacy of his system for establishing the law of Thelema. Refer to the XIs-OTO, the correct mode of which formula involves specific kayas that are entirely absent from the masculine organism. Of the formula which Crowley attributed to this degree, he himself maintains that it is an abomination if used in any but a magical context. Of the true formula of this degree, he was unaware until late in his life, too late to rectify the area of practice relating to the higher degrees of the OTO, which was then under his aegis. The inner teachings relating to these degrees were not imparted in full to Crowley's predecessor, Theodore Royce, who had himself recoived fragments of them from the order's reviver, Dr. Karl Kellner. Kellner, in turn, had received them from tantric adepti of the Anuttara, Amnaya. LT is these teachings in their entirety that have been restored to the order, along lines of the original Parampara, by the present author. Yet another misconception concerns the role and symbolism of the child. The magical child, the alchemical child or homunculus, and the crowned and conquering child of Thelema are expressions which refer not to any human child nor to any childlike characteristics of humanity, but to the magical formula of the elder Horus, or Set, the dark twin of Amsu Horus. Again, the babe of the abyss, the children of Isis, these expressions embody the notion of the magical man-ikin or dwarf, the gnomic, crippled, hunchbacked deity, the type of solar energy in Amenta, the house of the hidden god. He is represented by a child because, like a child, he possesses the potential of either or of both sexes. This occult deity is the androgynous totem of the greater mysteries reflected into the lesser. The denizens of Amenta are the mummied dead waiting to rise like Horus, or soar like the golden hawk from the darkness of earth. The child or babe rises from an invisible world and is a symbol of that world. LT is in such a context that we understand the Lovecraftian grimoire which records the names and ritual of the dead, the Necronomicon. The entities of Lovecraft's pantheon are a spectre of the one eternal energy, whether hidden in the earth or in the waters of time, or revealed in the circumpolar gulfs of infinito space. The concept of Typhon explained, we can state its significance for our work in the outer. In outer gateways and peepiers, a transmission received in New Isis Lodge during a series of workings, which continued for 7 years, 1955-62. The goddess Silba was the informing current. Silba has her throne within Yuggoth, from which she projecteth the Trans-Plutonic planet Isis. The Occult Typhonian order is concerned in its higher degrees with effecting transmissions and communications from this planet for the purpose of opening gateways to this trans-Yuggothian power zone. To state the matter in terms that may be more familiar to readers, unacquainted with the terminology of the Necronomicon gnosis, we may say that the Earth is walled in, imprisoned and conditioned by the power of Saturn, Teen providing a passage through the trans-Saturnian planets Uranus, Chozar and Yuggoth. We were able to open communications with New Isis, the throne of Silba. Silba therefore designates Typhonian vibrations as received through the prism of these 3 outer power zones. One other magician, only known to us, has thrust beyond Yuggoth. I refer to Michael Bertio. But whereas his parampara stems from Atlanto-African sources, the current of the occult Typhonian order is fundamentally Lemurian. One tentacle of the Lemurian energies is manifest in entities known as the Grey Ones. Crowley sealed this line of transmission in the portrait of their leader, Lam, which he presented to me in 1945. There has been much speculation concerning the identity of Lam with Aiwass. Crowley's claim that Aiwass was his holy guardian angel does not necessarily comport its surface meaning. Crowley did not, to my knowledge, openly identify Lam with his holy guardian angel, although he most emphatically did so in the case of Aiwass. Suffice it to say, Lam has furnished an explanation, although it is just as likely to be misconstrued as Crowley's own. It is that Lam is a tentacle of Seba, who, embracing the tree of life entire from Nuilsis to Malkuth, saturates Earth's aura with the self, same current that powers the occult Typhonian order. Having alluded to the tree of life, it should be noted that a new doctrine thereby emerges concerning its structure and significance. The tree is fourfold, and it has its reflection in depth as the tree of death. Both trees have also their night side facets. The reflex in depth may be allotted to the deep ones. The back or night side of the tree is the domain of the outer ones. In the realm of Amenta, such concepts cannot but be misconstrued by the uninitiated, this side of the abyss. Crowley was therefore at pains to classify his writings and statements according to the plane to which their respective truths applied. But this was at best a compromise. To render only self-sensitive to influences from outside, it is necessary that the fire snake becomes active beyond the sphere of Saturn. Though fire snake's transcendence of Saturn is rare, but when it occurs, it is accompanied by behavioral modifications in the human psyche, which are generally unfamiliar and often unacceptable to ordinary society. Crowley sometimes behaved in abnormal ways in order, as Castaneda might have phrased it, to shift his assemblage point, and thus to render himself available to vibrations from outside. If this is understood, much of Crowley's outrageous behavior becomes comprehensible. Such considerations apply also to Blavatsky, Dali, and others who lived their dream in addition to describing it. The occult Typhonian order is almost exclusively concerned with these Trans-Plutonian vibrations. Hecate celebrates its rites during the time of the dark fortnight, not for any nefarious reasons, but because the sun's setting on Karth heralds its rising in Amenta, the dark or hidden land. Hor it reanimates, the dead, the ancestors, and when the supreme spells are uttered, the great old ones themselves respond. Similar considerations apply to the worship of the Hecate aspect of the goddess in the Typhonian mysteries. She is the hag, the crone, the ancient woman and grandmother, not in terms of terrestrial age, but of the primal imago of woman as the first, and therefore the oldest symbol of manifestation. This is not to infer that the popular conception of the Vitae as hagas no ground. In fact, it has. Its explanation may be sought in the absence of the periodic purgings of blood, the life or soul of flesh, which, having ceased, continue to distill astrally their deadly venoms, wherewith the witch barbs her curses. But this phenomenon is merely a negative reflex of the Hecate current and does not pertain to its major mysteries, to which we now turn our attention. The occult Typhonian order is almost exclusively concerned with these Trans-Plutonian vibrations. Hecate celebrates its rites during the time of the dark fortnight, not for any nefarious reasons, but because the sun's setting on Karth heralds its rising in Amenta, the dark or hidden land. Hor it reanimates, the dead, the ancestors, and when the supreme spells are uttered, the great old ones themselves respond. Similar considerations apply to the worship of the Hecate aspect of the goddess in the Typhonian mysteries. She is the hag, the crone, the ancient woman and grandmother, not in terms of terrestrial age, but of the primal imago of woman as the first, and therefore the oldest symbol of manifestation. This is not to infer that the popular conception of the Vitae as hagas no ground. In fact, it has. Its explanation may be sought in the absence of the periodic purgings of blood, the life or soul of flesh, which, having ceased, continue to distill astrally their deadly venoms, wherewith the witch barbs her curses. But this phenomenon is merely a negative reflex of the Hecate current and does not pertain to its major mysteries, to which we now turn our attention.
1. The cosmic chain. Lee Manifestation of Babylon, the avowed aim of the TPNRSMM Hubbard workings in the 1940s, was also one of the aims of the new Isis Lodge rites of the 50s. But the motivations behind these workings should be seen to differ. The former aimed at the embodiment in human or quasi-human form of the spirit of Babylon. In the latter, Babylon signifies an opening of outer gateways for traffic with trans-human entities. The name Babylon means, literally, the gate of the sun being the outer vestment or symbol of the silver star that illumines the order known by that name, from the seat or throne of New Isis. TN order therefore to understand the import of these workings, it is necessary to understand certain events which culminated at the time of Aleister Crowley's death in 1947. It is also necessary to fathom the involvement of John W. Parsons both with Crowley and with L. Ron Hubbard. These strands of the magical fabric may not be unraveled without reference to the occult scheme initiated by Iwas in 1904, and the part played in its unfolding by Charles Stansfeld Jones, 1886 to 1950, or Frater Akkad. Frater Akkad announced the inauguration on April 2, 1948, his 62nd birthday, of the lesser or daughter cycle of the Aeon of Maat, which according to Crowley was due to fall some 2,000 years hence. But Frater Akkad's computation may not have been premature. In fact, the actual beginning may have occurred in 1944 when Parsons and Hubbard, together with Akkad, unknown to both of them as were they to him, engaged in a series of magical workings. The result was a new impulse from the outer ones who, in 1904, had employed Crowley as a channel of communication between themselves and planet Earth. Both Jones and Parsons were high initiates of the Ordo Templi Orientis. Hubbard was not a member of that organization, but he had wormed out of Parsons the central secret of the order and had assimilated it into his own magical repertoire. Degree Jones, Parsons, Hubbard were, in effect, instrumental in realigning the current which heralded Maion, the forerunner or adumbration of the great Ion of perfection, the perfect Ion or Aeon of Maat. This magical revival of a current infinitely older than that which informed the eons of Isis, Osiris, and Horus had its reflex in the scientific and political revolution that erupted around 1945 with the first atomic explosion. As previously stated in Outside the Circles of Time, it was this explosion, and the tests leading up to it, that ruptured the subtle membrane of the Earth's magnetic atmosphere. There occurred a massing of the shades, and 2 years later there swarmed through the resulting rent the forces alluded to as UFOs, LGMs, ETs, for which, after more than 40 years, no adequate explanation has been proposed by scientists or by the governments of this planet. Concomitant upon this intrusion from outside there occurred a marked increase in nervous and psychological disorders and a heightening of dream activity among sensitives, artists, metaphysicians, even scientists. Certain dreams had already inspired writers such as H.P. Lovecraft with prophecies concerning eikons and time cycles which they considered mere fantasies. But their dreams brought into focus a reality more vivid than the mundane reality to which humanity is normally subjected. More vivid in that they concentrated, in a simultaneous apprehension of past, present, and future, a single moment outside time and space as conceived by man. Lovecraft was one of the first to trace consistently the vectors of this eikonless reality, as Frater Akkad had been the first to quantify its magical geometries, and to apply its meta-mathematics to the tree of Lifo. Crowley had derided Akkad for turning upside down the serpent of wisdom, but Akkad had but reflected a tree of life in a dimension beyond the magic of the senses. Both Crowley and Akkad, however, remained unaware of the essential formula of Maat, although Akkad intuited the eikonless, wordless Aeon when he realized that Crowley, as the beast, could not have uttered a word. Also, and the fact is paramount, Crowley failed correctly to interpret verse 34, Chapter 1 of AL, which suggests an imminent perichoresis by alien forces of the Karthas atmosphere. For Maat is the matrix and the force field of interaction between sense and nonsense, between relative and absolute. Frater Akkad maintained that in 1926 he had received the word that Crowley bad failed to hear. At the same time, Lovecraft was beginning to decipher the strange sigils swirled by the power waves of Akkad's workings. Degree to Lovecraft, they appeared as characters in a grimoire of forbidden lore entitled the Necronomicon, the contents of which teem with references to the outer ones. Their reflexes are the deep ones and the nameless elementals which haunt the pages of Lovecraft's tales. 20 years later, in 1946, One such transmitted to Parsons the 4th chapter of the Book of the Law, or so Parsons described the Book of Babatan. Degree unknown to him, this event paralleled Akkad's daughter formula, which made of Al a tetragrammaton Alma, Ma being the adumbration of the Aeon of Maat. The significance of the word Alma will emerge in due course. Asterisk here, 2 of its metatheses Lama and Mala should be noted.
Did you enjoy this content? Then click the link in the description and get the full audiobook now to dive even deeper into this journey. Subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and share it with someone who will love it too.